Hey everybody, welcome to episode 6 of Grumpy Old Man and a Dodge Charger. Today's episode is brought to you by the letter D for Dave, who's a buddy of mine that suggested I make this particular video. He recommended the content. He suggested that I address the difference between real-life private investigators and what we see on television. Fair enough. So Dave, this one's for you. A few years back, I happened to be at a party, a house party, and as tends to happen, it kind of got around that it's what I do or used to do for a living. And, some people find it interesting, some people don't. Some people kind of find Private Eyes to be scummy shoe dirt. And this one woman in particular, she not only thought it was cool, she said, well, I would make a great detective because I like solving puzzles and mysteries. One, we don't say detective, we're private investigators. Detectives are a rank in the police department, we are investigators. It's actually a violation of our act that we're bound to follow to refer to ourselves as detectives. We can actually lose our license for that. Two, puzzles, like jigsaw puzzles? Anyway, like little pencil puzzles that you get from the dollar store? No. And as far as mysteries are concerned, I don't drive around with a bunch of stoners in a van with a talking Great Dane solving mysteries. Doesn't happen. It wasn't old man Gordo trying to save the mill kind of thing. So, being a private investigator, I kind of explained to her, I said, look, you obviously don't really know the realities of what we do for a living. I said, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to teach you. You are basically going to get Private Eye 101. Private Eye 101 at this very moment. I said, we're in the living room. I'm going to give you a case to solve. You've got 5 minutes, go get whatever you need. So off she flounces and comes back, and she has her cell phone and a pad and a pen and whatever. All right, fair enough. I said, now we're in the living room. There's two couches and a chair, kind of in a U shape, and then the television's in the front. And I said, pick a seat. Plops herself down in the chair. And I said, all right. And I grabbed the remote and I put on the Weather Network. I said, all right, here's the deal. I want you to stare at that television for the next 10 hours. At some point, there's going to be a commercial on. It's only going to be probably about 20, 30 seconds at most. And at the end of that 10 hours, I'm going to need you to tell me everything about that commercial. Who was in it, what they looked like, what they were wearing, male, female, and I'm assuming gender, don't get on my case, hair color, eye color, skin tone, weight, body type. What were they doing? Were they together? Were they apart? Were they selling something? If they were selling something, what were they selling? Did it mention the cost? Did it show the item itself? If it's medication, what are the effects and side effects and for? And blah, 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 blah. Anything and everything about this commercial for 30 seconds. I need every specific single detail. I said, but here's the thing. You don't know when in the next 10 hours that this commercial is going to air. So you cannot get up out of that chair. You can't go to the bathroom. You can't get up to get something to eat, something to drink. And I couldn't help but notice she didn't grab anything to eat or drink. And it was a party, so she probably had a few, which means she's going to need to pee sooner or later. I said, you cannot get up out of that chair for the next 10 hours, period. Even if the commercial comes on in the first 45 minutes, you're there for 10 hours, like it or not. Do not get your ass out of that chair. Do not take your eyes off of that TV for a single moment. That's what private investigators do for a living. And you think I might be exaggerating? No, let me tell you a story. A few years back, I actually owned and operated my own agency for about 7 years. From 2007 to 2014, I ran my own office. And I got hired by a lady who thought that her boyfriend was being unfaithful. She went out of town for a long weekend. And so from Thursday afternoon until Monday morning, come on, buddy. Jesus. Thursday afternoon until Monday morning when he left for work, we were on round-the-clock surveillance, so it was, like 90 hours, give or take. I can't recall off the top of my head. But it was close to about 90 hours of billables. In that time, we managed to pull in 30 hours of video. As soon as the woman left, the girlfriend left, within minutes, some chick showed up and kept an eye on him the whole time. But the funny thing was, the whole time that they were together, she stayed at the house, they went shopping, they stayed at a hotel, they played golf, all sorts of stuff. They weren't affectionate in any way. There was no hand-holding, no kissing, no hugging, no hand in the back pocket, no loving gazes across from the dinner table, nothing like that. So if we had just presented that to the client, she really wouldn't have had much to go on. So what he could easily talk his way out of that. He could just as easily say, look, she's just a friend, or it was last minute. My buddy's wife came in from out of town, and he asked me to entertain her. She needed a place to stay. It was my cousin, whatever. And without actually showing them in any type of compromising position, there's really nothing that we could have done to dispute that fact. Until Sunday evening, okay? Keeping in mind, we've been on this since Thursday. So Sunday evening rolls around, and Buddy's out. He popped out for a bit. She stayed home. And he came back, parked in the driveway, and there was a doorway off the driveway into the house that actually led into the kitchen. So he comes along, goes in the house, opens the door, and right next to the door was the stove. And comes in, she's there, she's cooking on the stove. He goes in the house. And the door was on like a spring-loaded close thing, like a closing piston. A few moments later, door opens again, and I happen to be there with the camera. And door opens, and up until this point, they hadn't even looked at each other with any type of inappropriateness. But as he opens the door, he kind of looks over at her, grabs her around the waist, and pulls her tightly into him. And very passionate kiss, just very involved, and it was that was it. And they happen to be at the in the doorway next to the stove, and they're kissing quite enthusiastically as the door closes. So it was less than 10 seconds, however long it takes for this door to close. So less than 10 seconds. And that's my point. During those 10 seconds, now literally 90 some odd hours of surveillance, 30 hours of video, and it came down to less than 10 seconds that I happened to catch video of this guy making out with this other woman while his girlfriend's out of town. And the point is this: if I had been watching videos on my phone, if I had been, at the corner store using their restroom to pee, if I had been at the drive-thru getting something to eat or get something to drink or whatever, the point being, if I was not at that exact moment sitting, a third of a kilometer away using a zoom lens on a video camera, I never would have got that shot. So conversely, girl sitting there at the chair, who knows, if she got up to pee, that might be the exact 30 seconds as she's in the bathroom that commercial airs. She's just missed the commercial. So her client, who's hired her, who's paid her good money to find this information, she missed it because she wasn't there to see it. And it's an extremely stressful job because you have to be on high alert for those 10 hours. You're in a hot car, or if in the winter it's cold car, direct heat sometimes, whatever. You can't run the engine for the AC because, one, then your engine's running and you get the water evaporator condensation dripping off your car, which means your car's running. Or two, if it's winter, you get the exhaust coming out and your windows trying not to steam them or fog them up and stuff like that. You don't want to give your position away. Even if you are at a fair distance, you don't want to bring attention to yourself. And idling a car for 10 hours isn't the best way to stay discreet. So just to put that reality on it, 90 hours came down to 10 seconds. Those 10 hours of sitting in that chair come down to that 20, 30-second commercial. That's what we do for a living. That's how private investigators live their daily lives for the most part. And people need to realize that. It's not all guns and bikinis kind of thing. You know, I don't drive a Ferrari. I drive a Charger by choice. And it's just, as fun as it is to see how movies perceive what we do, it's not the reality. It really isn't. So that's something that anybody looking to get into this profession, especially because they've been swayed by novels or TV or movies or anything like that, they're in for a serious reality check when they finally do get into this career. I've never seen an episode where Magnum was sitting on surveillance for 10 hours waiting for a 10-second kiss. And that's what it came down to. And she came back. I met with her a couple of days later after she came back from her trip. And I said to her, I'm like, look, I literally had a report that was about an inch thick because we had to document everything they did, everywhere they went, the whole bit. And I said, I'm like, look, you know, I can give you the 90-hour rundown. I can show you 30 hours of video, but it all comes down to this. And I put a single still of a photograph that was a screen cap of the two of them kissing. And literally, that's all she needed to see. She knew from that still, literally one photograph that was taken from a 90-plus hour surveillance. And that's all she needed to see to know that this guy had a woman in his house while she was away, and they were affectionate. Didn't take anything more than that. And I believe she ended up leaving the guy. She was a really nice lady. That was that. So anyway, that's my time. That's my explanation. Hope it was entertaining and informative. Stay off my lawn.